So again, thanks for remaining available. So this is just open Q&A, questions that anyone has. Not so much on proposals to change anything, but just sort of the day-to-day life of our town treasurer and the types of questions. I know we've heard some questions about bonds and whatnot. I think Bill may have grabbed the mic first.
Yep.
So,
okay.
Go ahead.
Denise, I'm thinking ahead to our future casino revenue, and I'd like to think that as a town, we're going to find some ways to reduce our debt and to also consider some capital improvement activities. And along those lines, I'm wondering what we have today and maybe what we could do to improve that, if it needs improving, going forward, so that we have maintenance of a list of, for instance, in the debt category, the major costs associated with that particular debt line item. And so as we have funds available, we can quickly home in on those things that'll give us the biggest bang for the buck in terms of reducing our debt. And I'd like to think that that would be a tool that we, the town council could have, so that that could guide their decision-making going forward. So that's one question I have for you. And then along the capital improvement side of things, I'd like to think that maybe we could have a similar type of list, including, how we would potentially either pay for it in terms of funds we have in-house or, bonding or whatever. But I'm led to believe that right now we're pretty much maxed out on debt. I don't know if that's just a rumor or true, but it sounds, if it's anything like my home budget, it's probably true. So as I look at it, again, I'm just thinking, without making a massive amount of work for you in your office, how we could maybe think about having some database or something that could be readily available to decision makers, without having you to go into a big study or something every time somebody asks a question. We've got some money, what would we retire in terms of debt, and what would our options be? So I don't know if you could just comment on what your thinking is along those lines, and whether there might be some processes that we might think about.
Well, all of those lists do exist. You would find them fairly readily in the financial statements. We have debt maturity schedules in the back of the financials. I have schedules that I use that I've created, that I've shared. If it was something that we wanted to put up on the website, we could do that. But that information is fairly readily available, so that's not a problem. Same thing with the capital leases. I have a schedule of those, and their payoff and that kind of thing. As far as capital improvements, I think that's something that the town administrator is addressing with all of the department heads, and they're putting together a plan. And I believe that would go before the council for approval in terms of what's going to be included as capital, paving, infrastructure, vehicles, from police cars to fire engines to DPW trucks. All of those kind of things will get put together. Because right now, anytime we buy anything, it goes in the operating budget. If we buy police cars, if we buy a fire engine, the whole fire engine doesn't go into the budget, but the lease payment is calculated, and that's what goes into the budget and goes on the docket and gets voted on. So I agree, it would be nice if we could create some kind of a capital fund where we were able to remove those items from the operating budget, if you will, and use casino money to pay for our paving, to pay for our vehicles, to pay for our capital improvements. So we can focus on operating the town and not having to worry about that impacting our tax rate every time we need something.
Right.
As far as debt, I can give you a little bit of background on that without getting into too much crazy detail. We've recently just, this past June, this past fiscal year, I have refinanced all of our bond debt. So right now, we're in a very good position in terms of interest rates. They're probably the lowest you'll ever see. When you do refinance a bond like this, unlike a mortgage, you can't just go in and pay down on the principal. There's a 10-year call option, which
Right.
means we can't pay down any principal for 10 years. Or we can't refinance for 10 years, without penalty, of course. But one of the things that anybody looks at before they even refinance a bond is what is our savings going to be if we go through this whole procedure, because it's a costly event. And with our interest rates as low as they are, they would have to be near zero to, I think it's a 3% threshold of savings, if I'm not mistaken. So we'd have to really be in a very, very low interest rate environment to derive a benefit to go through that. I think you could probably get more bang for your buck, as you say, by paying off leases that we have existing, by investing in our unfunded liabilities, which may yield us greater interest rates. Because we do have our police pension that's needs funding. We do have OPEB that needs funding. We could use a paving program. I mean, there's so many needs. So you kind of have to look at what's going to yield the greatest return, in my opinion.
Just, if I could,
Okay,
just a quick
thank you.
follow-up question. We also do and could invest in our portfolio that you manage, right? I mean, I don't know.
I'm sorry.
We could also invest the funds as well in our own interest-bearing securities, or
Yes, but operating revenue
pretty low?
is pretty low.
Right, okay.
So, you know, you have, it's pretty stringent, and I'm a very conservative when it
Investor.
comes
Yeah.
to our general fund operating. I mean, nobody wants to lose that.
Right, okay.
So on your long-term investments, your pensions and your OPEB liabilities, where, you know, the investment managers have different goals than operating, you can take a little more risk.
So this is very short-term,
Right.
really low-rate stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Jeff.
So Bill touched on one of my questions, and I just want to follow up, but I happen to see a few documents sitting here from the council. I'm looking at an email, a Gmail, casino revenues. It's from you to Paul, to our town administrator, and this is dated Wednesday. So this is the one that says after consultation with our financial advisors, comma, and you attached it here. I just want to note one thing. Denise, our treasurer, seems to have pointed out that we would also, if we pay down debt, we start to sacrifice the 30% matching. Is that accurate? So there's a matching thing going on, and so if we start paying down debt, we start chewing away at this benefit that we receive.
Right, so you have to weigh
have to look at
all
all
of those
that.
pieces.
Yeah,
Because the school bonds, like we have.
housing aid.
The housing aid is close to 30%. The library is over 60% that the state pays us back. So if you start, you know, kind of have to look at it like this. You're going to start losing this benefit.
Yeah.
So you really have to analyze what is the best use of this money. We all want to get out of debt, but there could be better uses for it, especially in light of the fact that we just refinanced all of the bonds. Every single one of them over the last 4 years has been refinanced. And even to just do anything with the debt, you'd actually take the money and put it into an escrow account to be later used to pay down the debt, but you wouldn't be doing it for quite a while. So you have to ask yourself, how much am I gonna earn in that time period to pay
Right.
off the debt when I could be using this money to do something else?
Okay.
So the last, I just don't understand the the last paragraph. And it just says, the most savings will come in the form of paying for capital equipment instead of leasing. You said that earlier. And then there's a sentence here, and I don't know if there's I'm missing a verb or something or a subject, but investing in the police pension OPBEB funds where accounts are earning and growing at rates in excess of the rates we are paying on debt or earning on general fund revenues. Can you explain what you're trying to say there? I'm not seeing I'm just not following that sentence.
What I'm trying to say is, if we can invest in the police pension, which this year earned in excess of 7%, in OPEB, which they're projecting is going, it's in a fund just like the pension fund, so it can be invested more aggressively, so we can earn more money on those funds than I would earn if it were invested at 0.9%, which is the most I'm getting right now on general fund money.
So are you suggesting in this sentence then that we're going to take part of this, if we're going to say, hey, how are we going to spend this $3 million minimum bucks, that we would take some of it and invest it? Are you talking like short-term, 90 days?
No, I'm
Or are you
talking
talking
about-
about long-term investing this versus like
No,
lowering
I'm
taxes?
talking about taking the pension plan, the 700,000 that we put into the police pension plan.
Yeah.
And instead of having that in operating, you use the casino money and you fund those things that we can't seem to get a handle on.
And
use the money to do that, because we just can't seem to get ahead of it. So we're taxing the people to fund the police pension, we're taxing the people to fund, well, we're not even funding OPEB right now. We have no OPEB funding, other than
so,
what the employees are putting away. So we need to start addressing those unfunded liabilities. So why not use the casino revenue to do that? Let the casino pay for paving, let the casino pay for those items that we just can't seem to get a good handle on.
okay. So in some cases then, are you advocating potentially so if we currently have 700,000 a year going into the police pension from the budget, so if we took the 700,000 and transferred it into the capital fund, then we could lower the taxes by the levy by 700K. Is that what I'm
Absolutely.
understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Are you also suggesting that we throw more money at the police pension fund or not? Or is that up for debate?
That's up for debate. I'm just looking at things that we just can't seem to, the can keeps getting kicked down the road. So here's our opportunity to, get a hold of this problem and address it.
Okay, so, I just wanted so is this memo is obviously a public document, it was sitting over there, so I think that would you be so kind, I know you sent this to the administrator, it's a public document, would you be so kind as to send this, forward this to, just because I pulled it off the table here, forward it to our secretary, Richard, Rom?
Oh, okay.
It's a Tiverton CRC at
Cox.
Cox.net, I think it is, or something. It's available on the website, on our page, there's some email.
Do you mind telling me what the date of that is?
Sure, it's November 1, 2017, 3:33 PM. It was from you to Paul.
Can I jump in with
What is the subject line?
Casino scenarios,
Okay.
and it's all about, follow up to your question about what are the implications of paying off debt versus not. So I think you, yeah.
I'm confused about that pension thing.
Okay. So I have more questions, but I'll let someone else talk.
Just real quick, I just want to close it. So on the capital leases, some capital leases also have prepayments or minimum total gross payments, but you're saying ours, in general, you could theoretically prepay them? or-
I'd have to look at, but some of our older ones, yes.
We think
would be
there's
able-
some-
And probably our older ones are at the higher interest rates anyway,
Okay.
so I would always go to those first
Okay.
to,
So that would-
to pay
What are we
down.
leasing?
Well, it's,
What are we
I'll
leasing?
let capital leases and debts and
Lease
bonds
to-
are kind of one of the
lease to,
same, so,
To own,
you know,
like the fire
fire
truck,
trucks
the
or
ambulances.
printers, yeah, so.
When you look at the budget, the amount that's appropriated for that year is the lease payment on the vehicle.
I thought we were paying payments to own it, no?
We are, yes, it's lease to own.
They just call it capital
Yes.
lease.
Oh, you
It's
call it
the same
lease?
thing.
Oh,
That's what it's
As opposed to-
Oh,
municipal leasing.
okay. I just never
It's
heard
lease
of
to
it that
own.
way.
Yeah.
I just understand you lease a car.
But there's an interest factor in there that we're paying,
Mm-hmm,
so.
mm-hmm. And I just, if you don't mind, I'm not understanding, you're taking the $700,000 that you'd pay into the police pension, and where are you gonna put it?
I proposed some
Yes.
of the items to come out of the operating budget and be covered by the casino revenue.
So we're gonna use casino, I don't understand how that's supposed to balance out, would be out how's that supposed to balance out?
Well, it would lower your operating budget by 700,000,
Right,
which would lower your levy.
but then 700, I guess it balances out.
As we sit here today, there is an actual real balance in the pension fund. It may not be sufficient.
Oh, there is.
To meet things,
As a matter of
but
fact, they had a
OPEB
really good
is-
year, and
right.
they made some assumption changes,
Right.
and we were concerned that we could fall below critical status, but we did not, because the returns,
Yeah, it's a good year.
we had a good year.
Okay.
So,
I think if you're willing to stay another 10 minutes, we might go to 9:10. Is that okay?
okay, 10 minutes, that's it.
Is that it?
It's Monday
Okay.
night.
Well, we're trying to keep you from coming. So I think I stole the mic from Jeff, so I'll give it back to Jeff.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to try to move through this really quickly, and we might need to talk some more some other time. So I'm looking at 602, number 2. I'll read it to you. It's one of your powers and duties, number 2, monitoring the spending by all departments, boards, and commissions of the town to ensure that the budget approved at the financial referendum is not exceeded. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I know you do that, and at the beginning of the year, you get a certified docket, and you enter all the numbers, and then it spends, and you generate how much has been spent out of the account each month and whatnot. So is that the process of how
Pretty
you
much.
do that task?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so now I'd like to turn to section 203 in the charter, and you don't have, if you have one, great, if you don't, then because having partly written that section I just read, said, okay, so, our spending has to be within the FTR. When I turn to section 203, though, I have a question, and I apologize, I have to flip over. So if I read title of 203, it's balloting on major appropriations and on proposal for borrowing for the issuance of bonds. And it says, any major appropriation other than those which are part of the annual budget for an amount in excess of $500,000 and for any proposal for the borrowing of money, blah, 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 needs to go to the voters for a vote, okay? Now, this is a very, and to me, this is not a clear section. And my question is there spending that goes on that you know of from the general fund outside of the annual FTR budget?
No.
So you're saying all spending, like that budget's it, right? And that's what I would assume. I mean, I'm trying to learn this because there's this huge, many, many coffees have been spent looking at this section 203 and trying to digest it. So are you suggesting or saying that that spending does not occur under $500,000 out of the general fund without authorization of the FTR?
Can you give me an example?
I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples.
Okay.
Okay? And this is, I'm happy to give you 2 examples. I'll give you 3 examples, just to keep it moving really
Good
quickly.
right now.
Really quickly. One example is that somebody applied for a grant for $25,000 to do something, and it came in, and for some reason it got put in the general fund, and it got spent, and then it went over, and you moved it somewhere, and it got spent. Okay, that's like one pretty clean and understandable, like, example. Or $500,000 for the gas station, okay? That might have come in and got dedicated or something like that. So that's one example. Second example I want to give is, second example would be, second example would be, we need 40 grand and we don't have it, and we're the town council and we're just gonna spend it. Because we can spend up to $499,099.99 under this section 203 outside of the FTR approved budget. So in other words, you could spend 20 grand, a month later you could spend 30 grand, you could spend $500. It can be spent out of the general fund without approval at the FTR. That's second example, whether it's a grant for cupcakes for opening, or whether it's 400 grand for something big, or 20 grand for a Bobcat. That's the second example. So the third example I want to give is a $75,000 and $100,000 payout in a legal settlement that we read in the paper about last year, and maybe this year, either 75 or 100's going out. And it's been really bothering me where that money's coming from, and I don't know. And I guess maybe the council's tightening their belt to get this money out of the budget, because they decided to settle the case and give away $175,000 over 2 years. So these are the three examples I have, and I've spent way too many pots of coffee reading this and trying to figure out how this works. So I don't know if maybe we need to have another sit down, or, but this is a huge area for me. And if there's just some way to explain to me, those three scenarios in 3 sentences, do they happen or don't they happen? What do you allow to happen?
Well, the first two scenarios you're describing would be, I think, would fall under the accounting guidelines for special revenue funds, which are all accounted for in the back of the financial statements. We wouldn't be able to run the town without a grant comes. A lot of the grants are reimbursable grants, Jeff. So, when they did Boogamosh Park, or when they did the boat there, Stone Bridge, the improvements at Grinnell's Beach. Any of the DEM grants, they're all reimbursable grants, which means we spend the money and we get reimbursed.
So they're called reimbursable grants?
Well, yes, but I mean, that's the nature of the beast.
Okay, no, I'm just trying to learn. Like, I'm not, yeah.
There's very few grants that we actually get a check. Some of those are more like, and you'll see them again in the back of the financial statements.
Is that the audit you're talking about?
Yes.
Back of the audit, okay.
So just jump, because you've actually hit my question, which is, and I'm also thinking back to days in the budget committee and other positions. There are in fact sources of real money that come into the town and are spent outside of
I would
the
say
FTR.
almost the spending
Right.
happens first, and then we are reimbursed, and
And all that's in the audit?
all of it's in the audit.
Because, pay as you throw, there's these grants, we want to get these grants. I could imagine a donor that wants to make a gift. And so what I think, this is me just wearing, I think we've got a charter language problem, because as I read the charter, all that stuff's supposed to go to the general fund. And I don't think that's just been the practice. I don't know if that's where Jeff's going with this,
Well,
but.
I'm trying to wrap my arms around it.
I don't think it goes, well, you might be right about the language, but, a grant is for a particular purpose.
Right.
Right.
And it has to be accounted for in a particular manner and used for a particular purpose. So you wouldn't want to put it into the general fund, because then
Right.
you can't comply with the requirements of the grant.
Right, exactly.
So that was one of the, and I don't know the number of the Gadsby, but
Right.
prior to my arrival, maybe 2009, they changed, they came out with the proclamations, and you had to change the way the financial statements were presented. because I know
Mhm.
down in the treasurer's office, they had to hire a firm to come in and set all of that up,
For Gatsby, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, I,
Because a lot of it used to be run through the balance sheet. And,
Right.
you know, the money would come in and the money would go out of the same account, which was fine.
yeah,
But Gatsby wanted to see it as a separate income statement, separate balance sheet for that fund.
restricted,
And that's what you see, because it's a restricted account.
right.
So that's what you see
Yeah.
in the back of the financial statement.
And that's, I mean, not to cut Jeff out, but if I wanted to really sleuth out every single dollar that I never saw on the budget committee, I mean, hypothetically, or the FTR
Right.
didn't see, nothing's getting past the financial statements. I mean, it's all in there.
It's
So,
all in there.
Pays either a revenue,
It's all in there.
everything, okay, thank you.
Okay. So the third scenario,
The
where
third
there's
scenario,
$175,000
If
over
I'm
2
not
years.
mistaken, I would have to go back and if, I honestly cannot, I know what you're talking about, but I can't recall exactly where it was transferred out of, they found the money in the operating budget unexpended, and it was transferred out to pay that debt, because they were paying it over the course of 2 years. So it was taken out of the appropriation, just like any
Really?
other, yes,
So it didn't
absolutely.
just get yanked out of the general fund?
No.
I'm trying to learn, because that bothered me. Okay.
All right, we just have a couple minutes left for this little mini workshop. This is very helpful, at least for me, thank you. Any other questions for?
I thought she was trying to find one.
Oh, well, we can, do you need more time? I'm sorry.
No, I'm all set.
Oh, okay, all right.
So just to summarize,
I
on
have
the,
the wrong financial statement in front of me.
no, it's okay. I heard you, I heard the answer. I may send you an email or something for further detail, but just to summarize on paying off, trying to use the money to, say our debt is 4 million, no, that's our debt service. Say our debt is 38 million and we want to try to use this money to pay it down 4 million a year. From what I'm hearing is, at least for the foreseeable future, 8-10 years, you just refinanced everything, and the most we should be doing with the money is servicing the debt and not trying to play games with refinancing it further and paying it. It's a loser.
We wouldn't be able to do that.
Okay, I just want to make that clear, because that's also been a lot of,
We would
a lot
not
of,
be able to refinance the debt.
okay, I just want to make that abundantly clear, because it's,
Why do you say that?
Well, because just like when you refinance your mortgage, you have to look at, well, what is my savings going to be?
No, I understand that part, but is there also a time?
yeah, 10
Well,
years.
there's a 10-year
10
call
years.
option.
10 year, okay.
Maybe some capital leases, maybe. I don't know how big that would all be.
I'm sorry?
Maybe some capital leases, maybe.
We might be able to pay off some capital leases. I mean, that's, you know, one of the things I had suggested a while back when we had surplus. Take that money and pay off the leases. But
So Denise, I've heard over and over from town councilors, especially certain ones, again and again, we're gonna pay off that debt, we're gonna pay, and so your statement is here, I just read your email, which I think is great, and I thank you so much for that email. Have you had an opportunity to address the council? I don't go to all the
I
meetings.
believe that that's being, tonight,
Okay,
that document is being presented tonight. I have spoken to a couple of the counselors.
thank you for doing that.
And, you know, tried to tell them that it's not as easy as it sounds.
Right.
It's not like a mortgage where you can just go to the teller and plop down 40 grand on the principal.
Thank
There's
you,
a process.
okay.
So, it is what it is.
And you sent this to Paul, and Paul understands your point, and he's there tonight,
Yes.
okay.
May I say one? I just want to clarify.
You get the last word.
I'm the last. Now, when you refinance, am I saying the right word for the bonds? Okay, after 10 years. I remember you saying, I think I asked, does that make it, when you redo it, does it last long?
No.
And
We
you said no.
refinanced to the,
Right.
to the regular term.
Because I thought on the back end I was
No.
going to pay the interest.
No.
No,
No.
okay.
We kept the terms the same.
Terms, okay.
Didn't stretch out, okay.
No. That's counterproductive.
Yeah, sure. Do you,
No, I'm done.
Is this for her, for the treasurer's items or something else? Oh, okay. All right, go ahead, sure. Well, you have, because we're on video, either come to the microphone or I will restate what I hear from you, and you'll have to hope I get it right, so it's up to you. So, thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Huge help, thank you.
Thank you. The past few meetings, we've been talking about plans and where to look for them. And a few years ago, the school committee asked the budget committee and the townspeople for $50,000 to do a study, a 5-year study. That would be an outside study. It wouldn't be us or a custodian saying, we need this, we need that. That was approved by the budget committee and the people. We spent that money, so we have that 5-year plan for the schools, exactly what we need. So that's good that we can go off that. So when we did the bond for the roofs and the boilers, which was wonderful, thank you to the people, then now sometimes if we have a fund balance, we might look at some of those other things on there, and that's what we do, and then we pay for those out of the fund balance, just because you had asked that question a couple of times about the capital plan, improvement plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay. Well, that was very helpful. Thank you for everybody.
That was huge.
We're going to move on now to agenda item 5, which is to acknowledge receipt of new proposals in writing. We actually only have one, which you've already heard, which was from Mr. Spears.
Thank you.
ID
again.
number 70. We have another in writing yet, and as I stated, I do expect follow-up from the town clerk and the school committee on the ones that they've already presented to us. Did you want to add? Nancy Driggs? Oh, okay. Oh, they'll be on the next one?
I don't know, it came
Oh.
out in the email.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Do you want to speak to that? Oh, it was a redo. Okay. Okay, so that one's you've seen before.
So can we just, if we're going to acknowledge it, can we acknowledge it? So this is, which ones, we're going to acknowledge 70, which
Well,
was.
70 we've done, and then there was I don't know if it's a resubmission or an amendment by Nancy Driggs for number
They called it
26.
a revision, a redo of my 26. So
Okay.
I don't know if did they put a new number on it?
No, it had still 26,
I
it just
think
said
it's-
26 revised in
I think it's-
parentheses, at least in the PDF title.
Yeah.
I don't think it had a new number.
Okay. All right, the next order of business is the adoption of minutes from our last meeting, which was on October 30th. We do need a formal vote on that if we're prepared to do so. Will there be a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
Mr. Chairman, if we're going to do that, I do need a couple of minutes to review them.
Sure.
Thank you.
We do have the action items. I will report on those action items because I know I'll be asked. The first one is the Coulter will organize a workshop on revenue grants and bonds. That just happened.
Yep.
Last agenda item, so we'll schedule follow-ups as needed. Nancy will draft language for further discussion 26, as you just heard, that has happened. Next, this is a carryover. This is trying to get a sense of how many non-resident taxpayers, and I should be more precise by saying non-elector taxpayers. So we've heard some discussion even today about folks who live in the town or pay taxes or have a connection to Tiverton, but they're not registered voters here, whether they may be able to participate in the financial town referendum, or as we heard from Mr. Spears, perhaps even participate on a town board commission. So that is still open as no change since the last meeting. I spoke with Dave Robert, and he is working on it. I expect to follow up by the end of the year. Next item is Coulter on another mini session on contract negotiations. I did speak with the town council president, Denise DiMedeiros, on this topic, and I think that may happen. I'm hoping that happens on the December 18th or maybe December 20th, whatever that week is. Hopefully we'll have a little mini session like we just had here with the treasurer, so that is progressing. Nancy further research on term limits.
I thought we sort of, in terms of the research, I thought we covered that after our conversation with
What kind of
DeSisto.
research were you supposed to do?
I have no idea. I talked to.
I think it was covered.
Yeah, we confirmed it's legal, so that's probably closed out.
Whether we want to do anything about it is another question.
So you can close that out, and then we have a new item for Jeff on action to research the Director of DPW qualification language in addition to a charter recommendation. So once again, we're talking about, how much of the stuff to bake into the charter. Jeff, did you want to speak to that, or that's at the very end?
The last one.
Yeah, before we pass.
I don't have anything to add, except for, I hope that the triage I did what I said I was supposed to do in my action, or else I don't want to get the wrath.
So it's triaged for,
I hope it is.
A question about, we spoke to Denise,
Tivertonvideos. Yep.
Town Council President, regarding the mini session on contracts, negotiations. Did she say who was going to do it, or?
Well,
But they do have a labor lawyer, and he's very good.
that's right, so.
Come in and talk.
Yeah, we that may happen, or at a minimum, hopefully we'll have her, and I've also asked the school committee chair and vice chair as well.
Okay.
So I feel like that hopefully happens at the second meeting in December.
I actually own that, the research, I don't remember taking that action, but if I did, I did. I'm sorry,
And our secretary's
I
not
was
here.
commenting on when I saw my name and the one above it, but the director of the DPW qualification, I don't
Do
remember.
you want to strike that from the minutes?
I'd like to move to strike that from the minutes.
Is there
I'd
any
like to move to
objection
strike that from the minutes,
Any
so-
objection to removing that from the minutes? Okay. All right.
No objection, okay.
All right, so has everybody had a chance to take a look at these? With
Yeah.
that correction, may I have a motion?
1 minute.
You see something?
Yeah, my name is spelled wrong.
Okay, let's
Okay,
get that
we're gonna
right.
fix that.
Yeah.
Everywhere or just in one place?
In the attendees, I don't know if it's anywhere else, but,
Oh, Scott,
Is it the E or is?
Stefan,
Yeah.
Stefan.
yeah, not AM.
oh,
Our secretary's not here tonight, so we can really beat up on him.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two corrections.
Yeah. Well, that one's
you
administrative.
should know his name.
So, also,
Anything else?
yeah, also, we had a discussion about the recall process. Was that in here?
Yeah, I don't
Yes.
see it in here.
Did you see it?
It's in there, at the bottom, was the bottom of the second page, I think the bottom of the second page, was it?
Yeah.
Number 8 on page 204.
Page 204, number 8.
Yeah, number 8.
I know that Steve was given
Yeah,
a,
an
his
action
name's
item.
not mentioned, he was
Action
given
item.
an action item.
Uh-oh.
Look up all the,
He escaped.
that's missing.
Action item to review other charters and
Yeah.
see how they do it.
Do you want to add that in?
I think we should.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
And that was specifically on the recall item.
Yes.
He's supposed to research using the charters to look up what other do for recall.
Got it.
Would that be in the new or the old or?
That sounds like a new action. So Jeff has slipped out of an action item, and we've substituted Stephen. Okay.
I do enough work.
Even with a V-E-N.
I'm really excited that you put these action items into the minutes, Donna. I think that's great. Okay. You have another one?
P-H-E-N.
Yes. Understood.
What did you say?
Is it, is P-H-E-N?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll move, do we have a motion to accept them with these changes?
Waiting for one.
I move that we accept them with these changes.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Nancy, second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Carries. Thank you. Item number 7, which is general administrative items. As you can see, we are now, it's taken a while, but we now have our video lined up. And my understanding is that we'll have the support to have the videos go for the rest of our term. So that's, I think, the only administrative item that I have to report, other than I do expect the next council meeting to be, the next Charter Review Commission meeting to be reserved almost entirely for the town council. But we'll put some preliminary items on there just in case they don't take up all the time. Any other administrative updates? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so it is 9:22, and we are going to now do something that we haven't done before, which is preliminary voting. So I'm not gonna restate the entire memo that Donna and Richard and I sent to you, but I do want to emphasize a couple things. So we have had preliminary discussion on some items. So again, our process, a sponsor, if there is one, has the opportunity to give an introductory discussion, like we've had some of those tonight. Then we have preliminary discussion, and then as time allows, as now we do have some time left tonight, we'll do some preliminary voting. These are all non-binding votes, so that means we will take the votes over again in January, and you are free to change your vote, change your mind, you won't be held to it. But this is important because what it will help us do is help us work a little bit more efficiently. So if we see something that has a preliminary vote to approve, then what we suggest happens is that the sponsor, okay, work with our assistant secretary for drafting language, and actually, that's Nancy, and start to actually craft what the literal wording changes in the charter would be, and then report back to the commission at a future date. Also, if there is a motion to approve, then Donna and I, and also with Richard, continue to do some other diligence, such as checking on a preliminary basis whether we can clear, whether there's any legal problems, whether, there's a legal issue, or even perhaps just a mechanical issue. As we were just talking about for an action item, how many non-elector taxpayers are there in town is something that I've been working on, because it has had a consensus of the committee. So what I'd like to do this as a matter of procedure in these preliminary votes is, if the sponsor is not here, we're going to skip the
That's to
item.
you, according to Bill.
Oh, these are mine? Okay. If the sponsor's not here tonight or in a future preliminary voting session, we'll just skip the item. We don't need to take a vote to skip it. We can do that administratively if there's no objection. If the sponsor is here, so for example, the first one on the item is 8A, proposal ID number 26. I will turn to Nancy and I'll say, what's your pleasure? Would you like this voted on tonight, or do you need more time? Maybe you need more time because you want to research it more. Maybe you need more time because you'd really like it triaged with 4 other things. Maybe you need more time because you're waiting on a proposal to come in that we expect to come in from the school committee. These are all examples of things. But if we do take a vote, then the proposal sponsor will get the first shot at it, and I would suggest either motion to approve, motion to reject. You can reject your own proposal. Maybe you've given it some thought and maybe you don't think it's the right idea. Or a motion to continue, which is just a fancy way of saying that it stays alive, okay? Now, we really don't have to take a motion to continue, because if we don't approve it or don't reject, it's going to stay alive anyway. But those are the options, so.
So I have 2 questions. The first is, with 6 members present,
Yep.
what votes?
That's a good question. So we do have a quorum here, so a majority of the 6 of us here is not 3, it's 4, okay? So nothing carries today without a 4-2 vote. Now,
Okay.
4 is not a majority of the full body of 9. It would still be a very valid vote. So I would probably suggest that if there was a motion to reject and the sponsor did not agree to reject, I would kindly ask that we don't go forward with that if we don't have at least 5 of us in favor of the motion to reject. Because I want to make sure that we would have a motion for the whole body. But again, it's preliminary, so if you don't like the way this came out today, we can and we will revote this in January again. Once all the proposals are on the table, they're triaged, there will be further open discussion. Are there any questions on procedure?
Yeah, I just want to clarify for anybody who follows this stuff out in TV land or anybody in the table or the audience, a document, that what Rob just summarized is a document that's 3.5 pages long, dated November 3, procedure for preliminary voting. At the bottom of page 3, it's in our packets actually, in case someone doesn't see it. It's CRC reference document 16, okay? And so page 3 of that document has a chart that was put together by our leadership. And it summarized, I just want to call attention, because if someone's watching this and we have very limited motions, it's because we're trying to live by a set of rules that our leadership has drafted, which we're going to try, I think. So motion to approve, the 3 things we can do, again, per this chart, are motion to approve, motion to reject, or motion to continue. And if we don't address an item or someone's not here who's a sponsor, it continues. I just summarized, but I just want to call attention to the chart in case somebody wonders why we're voting in such an encrypted way.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on then to item 8A, which is proposal ID number 26.
For that, I am a sponsor, and I would do a motion to continue only because I have filed a revised number 26 that probably arrived late in people's email box. And basically, just so you'll know, what the revised one will do is say that any vacancies in membership of any elected office shall be filled by the next highest vote total from the previous election for the duration of the term that has been vacated. Those are the 2 pieces I've added.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue on the floor, so will there be a second on the motion to continue, which we should,
I'll second the
right.
motion to continue.
all right, is there, we now have a live motion on the floor at discussion? I'm gonna attempt to take comments from the audience as well, to the extent we do have time. Is there anybody that wishes to be heard on, okay. Second call, any further discussion on the motion to continue? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion to continue? Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? That's unanimous. So, Jeff, our sister triage, please note that 26 is alive and kicking. Next is item 8B, proposal ID number 18. That's Jeff Karen, language that prevents general fund spending not approved by the FTR. Is any general discussion? We can have some discussion without a motion if anybody wants to, but I do want to hurry things along at some level.
I'm happy to make a motion if there's no general discussion.
Okay, your call.
So I'd like to move that we approve some of this language. And I don't want to get into the details of the language at this point, but I'd like to make a motion that we approve this so that we can actually draft some language. And if I have a second, we go into discussion, I'll explain why.
And you've just made that motion?
That's a motion. I
Okay.
motion to approve.
We have a second from Nancy. All right, the floor is open for discussion.
I would use what just transpired with the treasurer to, as an example of why I'd like to go ahead and clarify this language, because I travel in these circles, as everyone knows, and that language in section 203, and perhaps in a few other places in the charter regarding spending from the general fund occurring without proper authorization, in my opinion, is vague. There's a large percentage of people who interpret that language to mean that it does occur. We just heard from the treasurer that it doesn't occur. So this is news to me. So I'd like to, the reason I made the motion to approve this, and so we can move forward into some clarifying language, is to clarify essentially what we just heard from the treasurer. So that's my reason for wanting to approve this. And if you recall, this was my number 18, but that first night when I wanted to give everyone a feel for the committee on what language might look like and whatnot, I came forward, like, I think it was our second meeting with draft language to try to resolve some of this. So this is dear to my heart to clarify.
Any commissioners want to comment on, this is proposal number 18, language that prevents the general fund spending not approved by the FTR. Anybody from the public wish to be heard on number 18? Second call? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor on the motion to approve number 18, and again, so this is a preliminary vote only. This will be revoted again in the deliberation phase that will open up in January, but what this motion would do is it would basically assign the sponsor, in this case Jeff, to work with Nancy to draft actual language that we would then review, and it would also task Donna, myself, and Richard to continue clearing on legal and mechanical items, and of course all of us would still, continue to do our own research, study, and deliberation. All those in favor? Are there any opposed or any abstentions? That motion carries 6-0. Moving on now to item 8C, proposal ID number 2, Jeff Karen, change of FTR elector petition signature quantity requirements. Floor is open for general discussion unless and until Jeff would, if you'd like it skipped, or if you have a motion for us.
I have a motion.
Okay.
So I'll just move it, and we'll do it in the same procedure to keep things moving. I move we continue this one, just to continues.
Okay, will there be a second on the motion to continue?
I'll second that.
I heard a second from Donna. All right, we have a motion and a second to continue. Discussion is open.
So the reason that I made the motion to continue is this is dear to my heart as well. This is a very important topic, and this is one of those topics that is intertwined with about 8 other ones related to the FTR. And I'm still hoping that we get some of the things that the town clerk suggested related to the FTR timing, and this, of course, relates to that. So the reason I made a motion to continue, just so everyone understands, is because it's so intertwined with others that we're still waiting on input from people in written form. So that's my rationale for wanting to continue this one.
Does any other commissioner have comment on this matter? Just a comment I'm sharing, not as chair, just as a voter. I'm rather disinclined to any change in the signature count, but certainly support the motion to continue while we continue to do the work. I have yet to hear a problem that we're trying to solve in this regard. So, but then again, maybe there's a way to reach a compromise that's responsive to everybody's. So that's just a comment, and I will be supporting the motion. Any comments from the public? Second call. Right, we have a motion to continue. It's in second on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed or abstentions? Here it's no. 6-0, approved motion to continue. I'll leave that to the sponsor, working with the triage, which happens to be you, whether you want to keep that all the way until January, or you can bring it back whenever whatever feels right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 8D, proposal number 58. Ms. Susan Anderson, all taxpayers should be able to vote on the budget tax levy, non-resident and resident. Now, this is interesting. So here we have a proposal not by a commissioner. So there is, so the floor is open for anybody who would prefer to make a motion, if any, on this. The floor is open for general discussion.
I think it's an interesting proposal. I think it needs further discussion. And we don't have all the information that Rob's been waiting for from the tax assessor. So we don't know how many people, that's what we're talking about for who's going to be. This is, how many is the impact? But, I'd like to go forward for further discussion.
So are you making a motion to approve it?
I make a motion
To continue
to
or to?
continue.
We have a motion to continue. Will there be a second on that motion? We have a second on the motion to continue. The floor is now again open for discussion on this motion to continue. Again, to continue means this remains alive, and all commissioners are encouraged to continue review and consideration of the item.
I'm opposed to this motion in this second. I'd like to, I'm opposed to it because I think it's tremendously important. I think we can approve this, and I think that's going to help, once it's approved, it's going to help to generate the language and force some of the issues to get these numbers we need from the assessor, to get the legal opinion we need, and so on and so forth. So I think that, I think it's important to do that. So I'm opposed to the motion because I think we can elevate this, what I think is a rather important proposal. If it's got some kind of a preliminary vote behind it, it'll elevate the urgency to gather this information and whatnot.
Sorry, just use the microphone.
Oh,
that's all.
I agree with Mr. Jeff Karen's comments.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that you're not looking for a rejection here. What you're actually saying is you'd like to see it actually approved, not merely continued.
Right, oh yeah, absolutely, yeah.
I'll just ask, I'm not pressuring you, but do you feel strongly, would you consider withdrawing the motion to continue and allowing a motion to approve, again, on a preliminary basis only? Or do you feel strongly on?
And could you clarify why? Not just to continue, but for an approval? Because we don't have all the information.
But I think that this one here is a topic where we already have two things hanging out there on this. We have a tax assessor, apparently, whether he's been asked for information, and I don't think their information is at all germane to, I don't think we even need the information from tax me personally, but he's been asked. There's a legal question that, it's my understanding, is being worked on, and from just my viewpoint, I want to see this charter change implemented in the end, okay? So if I have my viewpoint as being that I want to see this charter change, is something that I've heard from so many people, why can't I vote on my taxes? I pay a huge amount of taxes. So I've heard that so much over years and years that I'd like to see this come to fruition. So by approving it, it elevates the stature that there's a preliminary vote for approval for this, and that preliminary vote allows our chairman, the next time he's on the phone with the solicitor, to say, it's been preliminary approved, how is that legal opinion coming? Or that's part of the reason, is to elevate this. I feel very strongly in favor of this, I'm not going to deny that. But the reason I'd like to see it approved is to elevate the stature of it so that, some real effort is burned up on what we have to do to try to make it happen.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I just wanted some clarification as why the difference from continue to approve. All right, thank you.
All right.
Do you want to, I'm sorry, I don't know if you're, are you considering withdrawing your motion to continue? Did you want
I'll
to?
withdraw the motion to continue, and am I allowed to change it?
You are, but before we put you on the spot, and no pressure, but Bill or Steve, did you want to be heard on either of these procedural matters? Okay. Okay, so what, unless you have an objection, I would permit Donna, if she chooses, you can require a vote on this, or you may choose to modify or withdraw the motions. You're completely up to you.
Okay, I withdrew the motion to continue, and I am going, no, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this. And change
You are,
my motion to approve.
right. So
And-
you haven't, yeah, you haven't changed it. You've now withdrawn the motion to continue, or now sponsoring a new motion to approve.
Okay, I'm sponsoring a new motion to approve
Seconded.
58.
Okay.
So, either, do we have a vote?
Okay. Yeah, we'll have a vote. And again, I think the important thing here is, it's preliminary. What you're hearing, no matter how we've styled this, is it's certainly not being rejected, but this will now, of course, you realize that you've now made yourself the sponsor. So, are you comfortable working on some of that legal language with Nancy as an action item?
I don't see why not.
Okay, great. Any further discussion on that motion to approve number 58, submitted by Ms. Susan Anderson?
I just have a procedural question. Is it required that the second be withdrawn as well, or no?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Is there, who made the second?
Steve.
Is there any objection to withdrawal?
No.
Okay, hearing none. It's good. I should research that. But, second call. Anybody from the public want to be heard on proposal number 58? Okay, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor, this is a motion to approve, and the motion's been made by Donna, picking up the sponsorship from Ms. Susan Anderson. Of course, you are encouraged to reach out to her as well. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? That's 6-0 approval. Next up is item 8E, proposal ID number 40, Richard Rahm, collection and distribution of union fees. Richard's not here, so I'm going to administratively continue that. Next up is item 8G, I'm sorry, 8F, F as in Foxtrot, proposal ID number 41, Richard Rahm, limit labor negotiations. Again, Richard is not here, so we will administratively continue that. Next up is proposal ID number 13. And I'm sorry, who's the sponsor of 13?
That was me.
Okay, I'm sorry. So Jeff Karen is the sponsor of 13. Language establishing term limits for the school committee. The floor is open for discussion, or Jeff, at your pleasure, we can administratively skip this, or you may make a motion.
I'll make a motion to reject this item, in the name of time especially. A motion to reject this item
To be
as a
clear,
sponsor.
you're making a motion to reject your own.
Correct.
Okay. We have a live motion. Is there a second on the motion to reject?
Second.
Can we have some discussion on your?
Yeah, I am rejecting this motion, and I will a couple of others too, at least one other one related to it. Partly just in the interest of scope of work in terms of how much we've got to get done. And, yeah, I think it comes down to that, is, you know, you gotta look at how much work we've got to do and what kind of topics you got to do. And this is one that I think we all felt like if we're gonna implement term limits for one body, we'd have to do it for others. And if we go down the road of approval here, eventually we're gonna expand, and it's just complex, and I'm not really sure actually in the end what the benefit is. So I make a motion, that's the reason I made the motion to reject. Doesn't mean we couldn't raise it again, but we got enough work to do, is sort of part of my reason too. Enough fish to fry here, so that's my reasoning.
Does anybody else want to be heard on proposal ID number 13, language establishing term limits for the school committee? Anyone from the public? Second call for discussion? Hearing none, and again, because there are only 6 of us here, if we don't have at least 5, I probably will look to revote this, because rejecting is kind of I just want to make sure we have a majority of the full body before we reject something, so just so you know.
Well, I'd like to speak on behalf of Jeff's motion, if I could.
Absolutely.
I agree with the rejection, Jeff, but I look at it more from the perspective of maintaining continuity and being able to retain a core group of people who can continue the work of whatever the body is that not only the school committee, but any of the term limit areas that we were discussing. So I think we would lose more than we would gain by imposing term limits.
I thank you for that articulation.
Yeah, just a brief comment. This ties in, and I think we actually had a fair amount of conversation tonight about how much, job description requirements do we put in the charter, and we're going to have a lot. It sounds like we're going to have some pretty good debate on this. I think there's probably a fair amount of different points of view on that. And I think I would also support the motion to reject, just if nothing else on the grounds that, this is, at least in as much as the school committee, these are the electorate's decisions in a way. So that's just a comment that I'd have. Any other comments on proposal ID number 13? Okay. This is a motion to reject. All those in favor of the motion to reject? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that is 6-0 unanimous approving the motion to reject, which means it's rejected tentatively. Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 8H. Proposal ID number 14, back to Jeff, language establishing a maximum term for the position of school superintendent. So we had just voted on the school committee. This is now the school superintendent. Jeff?
Make a motion to reject.
We have a live motion. Is there a second on the motion to reject number 14?
Second.
The floor is open for discussion.
I'm going to make the same statement I made with regards to 13. I could steal Bill's great idea, but I won't. I'll let him own that. So I'll be very brief about it, but same rationale that I gave.
I would only add that this is a little bit different because it's not an elected position. This is an appointed position, and so this is certainly the province, one could argue, of the school committee. So it's similar rationale, but still different in a way. That so we can probably take some comfort in deferring to their call on that. Does anybody else want to be heard on proposal number 14, language establishing a maximum term for the position of school superintendent? Anyone from the public? Second call. This is a motion to reject, so an aye vote here is to preliminary reject the proposal. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? That is 6-0 on the motion to reject. Next up, item 8I, proposal ID number 20. Jeff Karen, language that makes the recall process more practical. Jeff?
I'll defer conversation after the motion. I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a live motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Floor is open for discussion. Jeff, you get first speak.
I think we had two conversations about this one, and we had the first one was kind of an introductory one that night at 10 o'clock at Ray's request, but the second one was more substantive. And I do believe that this is an important topic. I think that there are very realistic concerns that were raised by the gentleman in the back of the room if the process is too easy. But on the other hand, I do think that this needs to be looked at. And I think we're at a point now, I contemplated putting some effort into this already, and I said, well, wait, we're going to have preliminary voting. So I decided that, the proper thing to do would be to get a preliminary okay before actual language is looked at and generated and looking at what might make sense for the thresholds. So this would be, if this were approved, which I made a motion for it to be, the next step would be to, to really sit down and look at the percentages or whatnot, and what would make sense for the process. That's my speech. But obviously, the goal of the motion is to make the process more attainable, okay? And I think that language that makes it more practical, so that would be the motion. And then the actual language will do that at some level, and we'll debate that.
Does anyone want to be heard on proposal ID number 20, language that makes the recall process more practical? Admittedly, this one is a little bit more on the conceptual side still than, it's a little bit of detail to be. Anyone from the audience? Second call. Hearing none, this is a vote to approve preliminarily proposal ID number 20, language that makes the recall process more practical. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to approve tentatively passes 6-0. Next item is 8J, proposal ID number 23, Nancy Driggs. Change budget committee size from 11 members to 7. Nancy?
I would, can I move to amend to 9?
You can, yeah.
Okay.
If, would you,
I would
it's
move
just a
to-
fresh motion, you can just,
I would move to amend the number from 11 to 9, and then I would move to approve.
You can do it all in main motion.
I think we can do that all as a main motion. So if I understand correctly, there would be a motion to approve proposal ID number 23, but modified from the number 11 to the number 9.
Thank you.
Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Okay. Is there a second on that main motion as described?
I'll second that.
We have a second on the motion. And again, for clarification, the original proposal, ID number 23, was to change the size of the elected budget committee from 11 members to 7. The vote before you now is actually to change it from 11 to 9. As a point of procedure, now that you have a live motion, for those of you that really felt strongly about 7, now's your chance to try to make a motion to amend, if there is any. Did you want to speak a little bit to your motion, or?
I guess I stand committed that the number should be decreased, and I guess I was swayed in the talk we had preliminarily to maybe do it in baby steps and not just jump from 11 to 7. And I think 9 would satisfy what I'm looking for.
Any further comments on the motion, which is a modification of proposal ID number 23, as modified, would change the budget committee from 11 to 9 members? And that would, okay. Anyone from the public? Second call? Hearing none, calling for a vote on the motion to approve a modified proposal which would change the size of the budget committee from 11 to 9. All those in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes 6-0. And our final item for preliminary voting is item 8K, proposal ID number 29 by Donna Cook, Town Clerk Qualifications. Donna, what would you like?
I would like to make a motion to continue.
Second?
Donna, did you want to speak to that motion, or?
I think this proposal was put forth, looking through the charter, there was absolutely no qualifications for town clerk. I found disturbing. And then, you know, we had the treasurer also get up and notice that there wasn't any qualifications for treasurer. Looking through other charters, there are qualifications for the town clerk. I just think there should be some qualifications. You have to have some knowledge of the workings of government, how to run an office. Right now, anyone can run. And there's also legal issues with not doing things correctly in that office, and you could get sued. You could be responsible for that. You might not find it right away, but then by the time you find it, there's big problems. So that's why I put this one.
So we're moving to approve? or
Well,
Continue, was what it was.
it goes twofold, because I have one where the elected position becomes appointed, and I think that needs to be discussed. And I also have certification that I've seen several towns do. It's called Certified Municipal Clerk. It's designed to enhance the job performance of the clerk in small and large municipalities. I think that's something we need to look at also. It helps them do their job better. And there are towns that are moving to that. They want that qualification. I'm not sure. Motion to approve, continue. I'll make a motion to approve.
Well, hold on, we've already got a motion to continue in a second, so
Yeah,
I just,
you know, I would prefer the continue, frankly. I think we, I'm still, I'm very torn again. I'm just one vote, but I'm still struggling with how much of this content should be in a charter, and in how we vet, as we talked about tonight, how we vet it. And so I think continuing it might be beneficial, at least so we can hear, you know, some of these other ones which are related, and maybe triage them all together.
well, can I have the floor?
Sure.
So I seconded your motion, Donna, and I want to explain why I seconded your motion. I want to turn everyone's attention to my work product, which I'm very proud of, which is called CRC Document F, and look at page 2 of 5. It's the triage sheet that's part of the package this week. And this is the reason I seconded the motion to continue. I'll give everyone just a minute to find it, but page 2 of 5 of the triage sheet. Okay? So if you look in page 2 of 5, and you'll notice I made a change from the triage sheet in the first week. I had two different things. One of them was called appointed versus elected last week, and I had another one called qualifications. And after our conversation last week, when I re-triaged these, I decided that I thought we came to a consensus that this is a big bowl of jelly in the proverbial sense that you squeeze here and it moves there. So we kind of need to, I thought they should be grouped together, as you just said. And that's what you'll look at, number 28, 30, 69, 32, and 63B are now the subtitle. The SORT ID is now appointed versus elected and qualifications. So they're all grouped together, page 2 of 5. And so the one we're discussing hopefully is one of those, and I'll be really embarrassed if it's not. Is 29 one of those? It should be.
I have 29 and 53, together appointed versus elected qualifications.
Now, why is it that I don't have that triage in properly? It could just be a clerical error on my part. In any event, at the end of the day, it was probably an oversight on my part. I sat here and spoke about it. So Yeah, it should be in there, that's a clerical error. But the idea being is that this is so related to that big topic that we need to discuss. And so that's the reason why I second your motion to continue, if for no other reason, that we can discuss that as a, you know, as a big bowl at first, you know, on how we're gonna do this and tackle it, before we just, you know, do it just for the treasurer, but not for the clerk. I think we should just have a discussion where we put all that on the table and decide, yes, we're not gonna make people appointed, or we are. And then once we decide that, okay, so now for the people who are still gonna be elected, how specific do we think we can get or not? And so I think we can handle the discussion in a larger context. And so that's why I would suggest we, you know, maybe all on the same agenda, these items would all go, you know, a big chunk of them together, you know, in the same night and as a discussion. That's why I seconded your
Any
motion.
further discussion on the motion to continue? I think you're seconded. Yeah, you've got a second, yeah.
that's why I seconded.
Any comments from the audience? Second call. Okay, we have before us a motion to continue. This is proposal ID number 29, Town Clerk Qualifications. All those in favor of the motion to continue? Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion to continue passes 6-0.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I just want to point out that indeed, it makes exactly my point. If you look at page 1 of 5, this is instructive on how this thing sorts. Look at page 1 of 5. You'll notice that on page 1 of 5, number 29 and 53 have the exact same sort ID, but you'll notice in the notes column, it says discussed. And that's why we're voting on it tonight, and it's on the agenda. However, you flip the page to page 2, this is important because we got to get used to how to use this tool. 28, 30, 69, 32 are all categorized the same, except you'll know it doesn't say discussed under notes. So because we haven't discussed it yet, we can't vote on these ones, which is the reason why I want to continue. So it's the same point I made, it's just that it is categorized properly. This exactly makes the point on why, because we haven't discussed these other ones yet.
I did notice on 53, the qualification for the tax assessor position. I guess I can discuss that with you after. It's, needs to be corrected, but it's not a big deal.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, so we've hit 10 o'clock. These are if and as time permits.
Do we vote?
On proposal
We did
IDK,
vote, right?
6-0 approved, or I'm sorry,
To
6-0 continued. Yes.
Yeah.
You want to call it a night, or do you want to maybe tackle 9A and 9B and then call it a night? Had enough? Okay.
Motion we adjourn.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there any objection to adjourning?
I second that.
Okay, all right. We are adjourned. Good night.